Hello, Muslim friends in the world. Jerusalem, May 8, 2025. The world was shocked as a devastating wildfire that started in various parts of Israel rapidly spread, threatening to engulf the heart of the nation, Jerusalem. Within hours, the fire, which had already scorched areas in the northern and central parts of Israel, began to approach, sending waves of fear throughout the region. Forests consumed by flames sent thick smoke rising into the sky, darkening the sun and creating an eerie, somber atmosphere. The fire was not only destroying homes and farmland but was spreading to densely populated residential areas. This was no ordinary disaster. It was a tragedy that tested the limits of human endurance, with Israeli authorities struggling to contain the raging inferno. Thousands of firefighters were deployed, backed by the military and air tankers dumping water and fire retardant on the fast-moving blaze. Yet, despite all efforts, the fire continued to advance with frightening speed. As the flames moved southward, a looming question emerged in everyone's mind. Would Jerusalem, a city so rich in history and religious significance, survive this destruction? Residents of towns in the fire's path were now on edge. Evacuation orders were issued, and streets were filled with vehicles as people fled their homes. Emergency personnel worked tirelessly, but with the fire drawing ever closer, it was clear that time was running out. It was not only the threat of the fire that caused such unease, but also the growing speculation surrounding it. Some began to say this was no ordinary fire, but perhaps a divine warning or even punishment for Israel's actions toward Palestine. Though unproven, such ideas rapidly spread among certain groups. But was this just a wild thought? Or was there something much greater at play behind the scenes? As every minute passed, the fire crept closer to the spiritual center of three of the world's largest religions, Jerusalem. Tension hung thick in the air. People were terrified of the worst-case scenario, that if the fire reached the old city, everything could be lost. And in the midst of this growing fear, there was one place that remained calm, unaffected by the raging flames. The fire that continued to ravage Israel had transformed the landscape into a sea of flames and smoke. Sirens blared from every corner, urging residents to flee as fast as they could. Jerusalem, once a symbol of peace and hope, now stood on the brink of destruction. Firefighters fought with all their might, but the speed at which the fire spread seemed unstoppable. Air tankers soared above, dumping water and fire retardant onto the inferno, while military forces were mobilized to block roads and prevent the flames from advancing further. Yet, despite their best efforts, the fire continued its relentless march southward, heading straight for Jerusalem. As the fire approached, the decision was made: mass evacuation. Thousands of residents in the threatened areas were ordered to leave. Streets leading out of Jerusalem were clogged with cars, all desperately trying to escape the coming disaster. Families scrambled to gather what they could: documents, valuables, and anything that could be saved, while the clock ticked down. But not everyone was prepared to leave. Some elderly residents, unwilling to abandon their homes, stayed behind, and others unable to move quickly enough were lifted by rescue teams. Every moment felt like a battle between life and death. Those who managed to flee towards safer areas felt a brief sense of relief, but their hearts remained heavy with fear and uncertainty. Would they ever return to their homes, or would everything they knew be destroyed by the flames? Amid the chaos, the situation grew even more intense as the fire began to near several sacred sites. The world watched in anxiety, as the ancient and holy places that had stood for millennia seemed to be in imminent danger. International help began to flood in, with neighboring countries and others offering fire trucks, medical supplies, and rescue teams. However, the support arrived too late, and for a moment Israel was on the verge of despair. Yet, In the midst of all this, there was still a glimmer of hope. Al-Aqsa Mosque will be safe, declared a local religious leader with unwavering confidence. For many, Al-Aqsa was more than just a mosque. It was a symbol of faith, strength, and resilience. And despite the growing threat of the fire, there was a belief that this sacred place, as a spiritual beacon, would remain untouched. As the flames continued to advance, all eyes were fixed on one question. Would this raging fire engulf everything, or would something or someone stop it before it could claim more lives and landmarks? As the fire continued its devastating advance, one place remained untouched, standing firm amidst the chaos. Al-Aqsa Mosque. In a city being consumed by flames, where everything seemed to be on the brink of destruction, this sacred site, an anchor for millions of Muslims around the world, remained unscathed. While the fire raged closer, reports emerged that the blaze had reached the surrounding areas of the old city. Smoke thickened the air, and the heat grew unbearable. Yet, miraculously, Al-Aqsa stood protected, seemingly shielded from the flames as if by a divine force. This unexpected preservation sparked a sense of awe and wonder among those who observed, as some began to whisper that the mosque's survival was no mere coincidence. "This is a miracle," said a local imam, his voice filled with emotion. "Al-Aqsa, the holiest site, is being protected by the hand of God." In the midst of this disaster, the mosque became a symbol of hope and resilience. While families around Jerusalem scrambled to evacuate, many found solace in knowing that this sacred place was still safe. For those who sought refuge nearby, the sight of Al-Aqsa's unscathed walls was a beacon of calm, a reminder that even in the worst of times, some things were beyond human control and could only be explained by divine intervention. Despite the growing fear that the fire might eventually catch up to the mosque, the belief that it would remain unharmed began to grow. Even other religious leaders, Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike, found themselves coming together, in awe of the sanctuary that the mosque represented, despite the devastation unfolding all around it. "It is a sign," said a Jewish rabbi, his tone respectful and amazed. "A sign of faith and divine protection that can't be ignored." The images of Al-Aqsa, its golden dome shining brightly against a backdrop of smoke and fire, captured the hearts of many across the globe. As the flames continued to approach Jerusalem's holy sites, it was clear that this was no ordinary event. Al-Aqsa Mosque had become more than just a place of worship. It had become a symbol of divine protection, a fortress against the chaos of the world. In the midst of uncertainty, people from all corners of the earth offered prayers for the mosque's safety, hoping that this sacred site would be preserved as a symbol of peace and unity, even in a time of such overwhelming destruction. As the fire crept closer, many began to wonder, could the flames truly reach Al-Aqsa? Or was there something far greater than fire and ash at play here? Something that kept this holy place untouched by the chaos surrounding it? As the flames continued to ravage Israel, there was a wave of solidarity from around the world. Nations far and wide began sending aid, fire trucks, medical teams, and supplies to help contain the fire and provide relief to the victims. But amidst this aid, a far more complex and volatile situation was brewing. The inferno that had so dramatically threatened Jerusalem had become a global focal point, and not just because of the devastation, but because of the political tensions that lay beneath. The fire was not simply an act of nature. For many, it was a symbol of something much deeper. Could this be a divine message? Was this fire a reckoning for the actions of Israel? As the flames consumed more land, many began to see it as an act of divine retribution, a warning for Israel's treatment of Palestine and the ongoing conflict in the region. In Israel, however, the fire was seen as an existential threat, and the government was struggling not only to manage the flames, but to address the growing unrest within its own borders. While efforts were focused on saving lives and extinguishing the fire, some citizens voiced their dissatisfaction with the government's response. "We've lost everything," said one distraught citizen, as he watched his house burn in the distance. "Where is the government when we need them?" Despite the overwhelming crisis, something extraordinary was taking place. Religious leaders from all faiths, Muslims, Jews, and Christians alike, came together in prayer, hoping that this disaster would somehow lead to peace. As the flames crept ever closer to the heart of Jerusalem, there was a shared understanding that perhaps this was a pivotal moment. Could this disaster be the wake-up call for lasting peace? Could the world come together to find a resolution, despite the chaos? In the midst of the confusion and devastation, one thing remained clear. Al-Aqsa Mosque, the one place that had remained untouched by the flames, had become more than just a religious site. It had become a symbol of hope, of faith, and of unity in a world on the brink of disaster. People from all corners of the globe had witnessed the miracle, and many began to believe that it held a powerful message, that peace, despite all odds, could still prevail. But with rising political tensions, the world now watched not only to see how the fire would end, but to see if this devastating event could lead to something much more profound. Would this crisis bring about a new understanding of justice and peace in the region? Or would it deepen the divides that had already torn the Middle East apart for so long?